All right, welcome everybody to the Green Fork Food for Thought podcast. Today's guest is Emma Muhvich. She's a friend of mine. She's a financial advisor, financial coach. Understanding finance is a very important part of the whole wellness picture, and Emma works hard to help people understand and manage their money and create a financial health plan. I met with you years ago. We actually met through the gym. You was a member at the gym that I coached at, and I was like, hey, can we sit down and just give me a basic, rough draft of what I should be doing, because at 30 years old I had no idea about money. I didn't really know. I read Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace, and just to try to get a little bit more understanding, and it's something that I was ignorant of, and just wanted to educate myself, and you sat down with me and explained it all, and I've started from there and started building. And I just think that when we talk about health, overall wellness, I think financial health is a big piece of the picture, right? Because money is something that we have to have,
right?
To get along in this world, and being able to just have a good relationship with it is super important. Whether or not you make a lot of money or you only make a little bit, being able to budget it and use it in the right places is just super important.
Right.
So,
I think that financial planning and life planning in general just go hand in hand. You're not going to be able to get what you want in life without using money as a tool to get there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like financial wellness to me. Is the goal is not to, the end goal isn't to have a bunch of money, That's not the point. The goal is to, be able to have money in a way where you can use it to get the things you want in life that you identify are important to you.
Yeah.
So wealthy is not, going to look the same for everyone.
Right.
Like some people, they're wealthy as having a big house or, having the fancy cars, but to someone else it may be not having to work 5 days a week in a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a small business owner, I'm not rolling in the dough, but I make enough, to support my family, and I've set up for my future, and that's really what it's all about for me. I don't need a ton of money. I don't need the big house and boats and trucks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just being able to feel comfortable, and not, for years of my life I lived paycheck to paycheck, and that's rough. It just creates this stress that you have to deal with, and it's constantly, on the back of your mind, and
it affects, like you said, like your health.
It does.
The stress impacts your health.
Absolutely.
That's why I feel like a lot of people start coming to me as a financial planner, because they identify it's such a huge stressor in their life to not feel good about where their finances are, and they know they need to make a shift, and they need, professional guidance to do so. And that's where it's kind of starting out, just getting that coaching to look at your financial situation, see what areas you are struggling with, just like a gym trainer, just like a coach, and just being able to help in those ways, and get them the confidence that they need, but also figure out what areas that they're really struggling with and the small changes that we can make.
Yeah, it's all about education, right?
Right.
Like, you have to know what you're looking at to be able to make a decision, and I think reaching out, outsourcing to somebody that really knows what they're doing, that's the move. You got to do that. Like, you wouldn't start an exercise program on your own. I mean, you could, but you'd get a lot further. It's
not going to go well.
Right, you get a lot further if you have, some professional advice.
Right.
So, yeah, I just think it's really important.
What I've learned, wealthy people delegate everything out.
Yeah.
Take back your time, and you will just make so much more strides if you use a professional, that you're not going to make all those mistakes that you would make on your own. Like we were just talking about golf.
Yeah.
My swing, my first couple years golfing, embarrassing, terrible. And if I had just taken lessons to start with and get started on the right foot, my game would be so much better. I'm working my way there because I started now, getting coaching and getting professional lessons. But the path is always so much more painful trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And who has that extra time? I don't want to spend my time watching YouTube videos, figuring out what I'm doing wrong. There's also so much BS on the internet, especially with financial things, and you don't know if you're getting the right advice or not. So again, it's just a much more straightforward process. You're going to get to where you want to be faster using a gym trainer, using a financial planner.
Yeah, just being able to sit down with somebody and ask questions and how it actually applies to your life.
Right.
You know, as opposed to the stuff you see on the internet. You're like, oh, that sounds really nice, but like, how do I do that? You know,
Right.
I have no idea. So the advantage you have of actually working with a person, a real person that you can talk to, I think is really important.
Right.
Yeah. I think money is a strange thing. So like the concept of money to me, I'm a big, like, I just boil it down to nothing with all my ideas and stuff. So like money is such a strange thing because it's something that it's currency, right? It's like, you know, we put this value on something and we trade our time and efforts and everything for it. And then we use that to get other things and gain, you know, peace of mind, whether that be like a home or whatever. So it's like this intangible thing that we've made tangible. And, you know, we all have to kind of deal with it. I think people have skewed relationship with money, you know, and don't know how, like some people think that money is evil, right? Like the root of all evil. You've heard that saying before. And it's really like, no, you have to it's something you have to work with. You have to be able to deal with it. So,
I feel like everyone's relationship with money
Yeah.
can be tied back to their household growing up and
Yeah.
their parents' relationship with money as well.
Certainly.
So, and I think that like what we as adults struggle with throughout our adult lives is undoing the patterns in the home that we grew up in and breaking those cycles. So for example, like, you know, you are an expert in nutrition and fitness, and there's all those stats that like if your parents are obese, there's a much higher chance your kids will be.
Right.
It's absolutely the same with money.
Yeah.
If your parents, you know, lived paycheck to paycheck, it's a much higher chance that you will be because you never got that education early on. And I see it a lot where, you know, I have clients who their parents, they didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so they're, you know, they have good jobs, they went to college, they're good savers, but now they have this scarcity mindset around money. So now it's like, I have to tell them, like, you can spend money on yourself. You are good. Like, our financial plan that we did says you're doing well for retirement, you're doing well overall. Like, giving them permission, you know, and kind of like undoing that belief system in their head is tough to do, but it's that gaining awareness of it. Conversely, I have other clients who, you know, maybe they grew up in an upper middle class home where their parents did provide them with a car and did pay for their college. And now you have someone who's making six figures, but they have never learned how to save. So they're still needing help with paying for a wedding or buying their first home from their parents. So like, that's where it's hard, is getting that awareness and understanding your relationship with money. And being able to, like, you know, like any therapist, half of my job is literally financial therapy.
I'm sure.
Because we're just, you know, trying to get an understanding where, how did you get to this point where this is the way you feel about money, whether it's, you know, positive, negative, or in between.
Yeah, I think the way that I was raised, my father is very frugal. He worked for the state his whole life, like one job, 9 to 5, that kind of thing, and very frugal, but never really talk to me about money. You know, and my mother was kind of the opposite. Like, she would be like, oh, what do you need? We'll get it. You know, and it was never something that I was brought up around. So I feel like I got kind of a late start. What do you think, 30? Is that like a late start?
No, not at all.
It's not?
I think that most people go through that. You know, your 20s is not a time where I think a lot of people's mind is on that yet. And then when you know, there must be some type of clock at 30 that everyone thinks they need to have everything figured out. And 30 is a really good time to like essentially start to get your financial like shit together. Basically. I think it's a good time where that clock is going off and it's saying, okay, like, you know, maybe at 30 you've started to identify what you want your life to look like a little bit more. And then again, money is that tool. Okay, so if this is what I envision my life looking like, you know, how can I start to get my financial picture in a way that's going to help me get those things?
Totally. Yeah. At that time, when I was 30, when I met with you, that started getting the gears going in that direction. And I actually started saving for my son. I set him up with a plan, and I've started talking to him about it. I made him read that book, Financial Peace, just so he has like an understanding of like what credit is, what different type of,
because they don't teach it in schools.
They don't teach that stuff. So, you know, I think it's super important that you teach the kids about this stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, I want him to be in a better place than I was. And maybe he doesn't get it right now, but at least I've started it for him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just opening up those conversations. And that's
Yeah.
something where, like, my household, money was not a conversation around the dinner table at all. And that's what I see in my best clients is they're, 50s, 60s, they're bringing their kids into our office and they're including them in some of the financial conversations, and they're getting their kids started early. And I can tell, sitting down with a 21-year-old, the concept of like retirement hasn't fully gotten there.
Yeah.
But they will, the more you talk to them and the more that they can see their own accounts growing, the more it's going to click in their head over time.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
If you take somebody that is super stressed about money and then explain it to them and they start to see that grow, it's just a relief off your shoulders. Like, oh, okay, I can spend a little money.
Right.
It's okay. I'm doing all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that at 30 was like a huge thing for me. To be like, oh, I can put this money away. I mean, at that point I had paid off my car. We could talk about like big financial decisions that you have to make. But at that point I had paid off my car. So I'm like, okay, what next? Like, that money that I was taking for a car payment is now going into 3 different accounts.
Yeah, you rolled that over.
Yeah, roll it over. And I'm still in that car. It's a 2017.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
nice.
great. And, maybe I want something in the future, but right now it's like, well, I'm saving and I'm doing well with that, so I kind of want to keep that rolling.
And also, like, I've known you for probably 7-8 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I clearly can see all of the growth and all of the work that you've put into yourself. And I think that when people start paying attention to their personal growth and excellence journey, it's funny how it will transcend from, like, maybe you start with fitness, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to make yourself the best version of yourself, and then that transitions to the next area of your life, which is like financial piece, or vice versa. Like mine first, my entire 20s, because finances is what I know, that's what I was focused on. But now that I'm in, my 30s, now I'm making sure that, now fitness and nutrition is more what I'm paying attention to, because I just think once you start on that journey with personal growth, you're looking at all areas of your life.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason for this podcast and the reason for my total holistic view of wellness and why it includes finances.
Right.
And I think that they're similar. They have a lot of similarities where it takes a lot of discipline, right? It's all about discipline. Like, you can't just spend your whole paycheck on going out and having fun. Like, you have to have
that balance.
You have to have a little discipline and put it away. I've seen people say, like, take half your paycheck and put it away, 30%, 40%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I really think that balance is going to look different to anyone and everyone. I think that it's just about starting something and adjusting as you go. So, like, I tell people, try to start, like, build in first, like, 10 or 20% savings, put that towards retirement first. And then I don't care what you do with the other 80 or 90%.
Yeah.
That's up to you. But take care of the things that you need to take care of first, and then make your budget fit with the rest of what you're doing. It also depends on when you start saving, right? In your 20s, if you're starting saving for retirement, you can afford to save less because compounding interest is going to do the majority of the work. If you're starting saving for retirement at 40 or 50, you may need to do that more 30 or 40% of your paycheck.
Yeah, which can be rough for people.
Right. So that's where I just say start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
And then you can adjust over time. And the more just starting, you're gonna start becoming more aware of your budget and other things you're spending too. So it's always a journey. It's not just like when I sit down with people, we do an overhaul and they, make a huge change. It's literally like habit stacking the small things. So first we get their retirement savings on track. And then over time, we're looking at their budget. And even a lot of people will start like you did, like they start realizing areas that they can trim down in on their own because they have now seen their retirement account growing, and that gives them more motivation to be able to save more. So it's really a snowball that happens over time. Yeah,
and again, it's the same thing with nutrition and fitness. Like, we're not going to start with, all these supplements or anything. It's like, can you wake up? Can you get a workout in? Can you start eating more protein? Like, just basic things to get that ball rolling. And then, once you have those down, then you start building more and more.
And it gets addicting.
I'm sure.
In
yeah,
a good way.
Yeah.
Positive addiction.
Yeah. Do you see people like, because of the addiction, let's talk about like gambling and stock markets and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of that? Do you see people that play around with that and think that that's a good way to go about things? Like, what's your opinion on all that?
I think that addiction is like a whole different animal.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that there's a book I read recently that's called Dopamine Nation, and it is really good. And I think basically like going back to, childhood and how that shows up in our adult forms today. And if you're young and you use it's all about coping mechanisms, right? So like we develop things younger, and we learn how to cope in either very positive or very negative ways. So the hardest part for me is seeing people who are grown, who, are in their 30s and, they are starting to use unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with stress.
Yeah.
And pretty much any addiction is going to affect you financially. I mean, Dave Ramsey talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's alcoholism, drugs, gambling, it will take a logical person and make them do illogical things like putting, $1,000 on a bet when they don't, have that money.
Yeah.
So I think that that is something that like, as a financial planner, that's something that I would really urge someone to seek like more therapy and get the help that way. Or 12-step programs are awesome.
Yeah.
I would send anyone to a 12-step program. They're life-changing for a lot of people. But I think a good point is that the addiction is a symptom. It's not the cause.
Right.
So they need to identify the cause in whatever happened in their life to, then address that. But yeah, so not to get into the weeds, but like
no, it's cool.
Addictions really destroy people's financial well-being. And I think that just going back to that dopamine, like our society is so focused on short-term dopamine nowadays that there was a study done, and it's basically like when people gamble, they actually get more dopamine if they don't know what the result is going to be either way. So it's like the more risk they take, they're not going to bet $1,000 on something that they for sure know is going to pay out. They they get more dopamine if they don't know what the outcome's going to be. So
like
it's just more, it's the thrill, it's the game of it.
Yeah.
So typically that does not work out well for finances, and it really doesn't work out if you're in a relationship and you have a partner who, that can destroy relationships too.
Yeah, I think so. There's something about the dopamine response where like you get the thrill of it. It's not reliant on the outcome. Right. So it's like
in the moment.
It's like when you talk about, I'm going to do this thing, like I'm going to go run this marathon or whatever, like you get that dopamine kick from just saying that you're going to do it. Yeah. So you don't need to actually go and do it. Mm-hmm. I just see people, like, the reason I ask the question is because I see people, like, online day trading all the time, and they're also working jobs, and, like, how smart can you really be doing that stuff, and how beneficial can that really be, or is it just another form of gambling?
It's gambling, for sure.
Yeah.
You could never, day trading is a really great way to inhibit financial progress, because it's like we see Saratoga Race Course, right?
Yeah.
It's the people, it blows my mind that these people will come off and they'll be like, I won $3,000 that day. That's great, but over the past year or 2 years or 5 years, how much money have you lost comparative? But no one talks about the losses, they only talk about the big wins.
Sure.
And it's like if we looked at your net balance sheet, you made $3,000, but you've spent $5,000 over the past year.
Yeah.
So, I just day trading, like a lot of crypto people just don't really understand, what they're investing in. And I think that they are doing it not for long-term wealth building. They are doing it to get a dopamine hit. And I think that that's where the danger is, because it really is a form of gambling.
For sure. Now, is that like what you do? Do you keep an eye on that stuff? Do you, like, if people work with you, do you manage their finances and pick certain stocks for them to go into? And what does that look like?
So as a financial planner, I'm part of a wealth management team, and we each have our different roles. So we have an investment committee that meets bi-weekly, and they're taking all the information that they have from economists, from the market, and they are basically putting together portfolios that we invest our clients in, and then making changes if necessary on that like kind of bi-weekly basis. So part of my job is to put clients into those portfolios, but I think that so many people focus on the investment piece and asset allocations inside of portfolios, but like a lot of my job as a financial planner is to like more high level look at asset location as well as the investment. So it's not just like how you're invested in your Roth IRA, but you know, whether we're putting money into your Roth IRA or your Roth 401k. And so there's so many different components of what financial planning is. It's not only the investments, it's also tax planning, estate planning, you know, student loan planning, all of those different things. But yeah, like I would say the investments is a very big portion of it. But that's something where, you know, we have people spending 40 hours a week on that. So it just gives me more time in our portfolios to then be able to spend more time in person with clients, because like those are the people who are doing all of those analyses on that data. They're behind the computer every day, all day, every day. So you can't do it all. And I spend most of my time with clients or building the actual financial plans, but then using those portfolios from our analysts to put people in the right places.
I just think that's so cool. I think it's so great, like, that you, and it's on an individual basis, right? Everybody has different goals and stuff. But it's so cool to be able to like see a person. It's very similar to what I do, just in a different world. Take somebody, what their goals are, where they're at, meet them where they're at, and then like just create a plan for them and educate them. I just think it's great.
And that's where it's cool, because there's no plan we pull off a shelf for a 35-year-old male. You know, like it's cool because it's something that me, client, and professional are building together, and we're building it from the ground up, and we can make that look like whatever they want to look like. There is I'm also like a big proponent of, I don't like the cookie cutter like American dream lifestyle. Like I think that whatever dream for your life that you have, that's what I want to help build your financial plan for. So if that looks like you know, not having a family and being, you know, renting and living in a different place every year, that's awesome. Like the traditional route is not the life that the world that we're living in nowadays.
For sure.
And so I think it's really cool that it's become more acceptable that people can do different things versus what it used to look like, you know, 30 years ago.
Get married, have kids.
Get a mortgage,
all that stuff in that order.
Not leave the U.S.
I know that you post a lot about like just lifestyle in, you know, linking lifestyle to finances. You know, like if you can afford to go on a vacation, like good, go for it. You know, and like living your life and not being so just like focused in on money and being stressed about it. So you know, I think that's great. You recently posted about something about going to college, right? And that's like it's a big deal nowadays. I mean, it's always been one, but I feel like things were a lot cheaper back in the day. You could buy a house for super cheap, go to college, get a good job, whatever. And maybe it's not the same anymore. So, you know, I went to college. I've got a crap ton of student debt now, and I'm paying it off slowly. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think from what I understand, you could pick up a trade or do any of that stuff without going to college and save yourself a bunch of money. Right. Or just educate yourself and, you know.
I just think that not everyone needs to go to a $60,000 a year for 4-year college. And I think that you can absolutely be successful without going to college. There's so many people that do that trade school route, make great money. Or I went to RPI, there were a lot of smart people that did community college for the first 2 years and then transferred in. We have the same degree, you know, and they just have a lot less in student loans. So I think that you know, a lot of it is educating your kids. You know,
that's what I was just thinking.
Just when, you know, talking to them early on about maybe if they're working a part-time job, like, I don't know about you, I worked part-time as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
I could have been socking money away for college at that point, but
Yeah.
no one had those conversations with me.
Oh, yeah.
That's something you can do. Also, parents can start college savings early on when their kids are born.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's being realistic. I think it's tough as a parent to, you do want to give your kids better than what you had.
Yeah.
But is sending them to a private school that's $60,000 a year where they're going to come out with $150,000, is that really going to be in their best interest? Sometimes,
Right.
yes. If they're going to be a doctor,
Sure.
and they're going to make an amount of money that it makes sense to spend that type of money on their education, great. But if they are, going to rack up $150,000 and they're gonna make, $40,000, $60,000 coming out, maybe
Yeah.
it's not the right, track for them.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, as parents, there is a level of responsibility to sit down, talk through the different options and educate your kids. Like, let's say you're in between a private school and a public school, like a SUNY school. SUNY schools are great.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they don't know what they ultimately want to do
Yeah.
career-wise.
Yeah.
So like having those conversations, it's really, I think that like when I think back, my parents let me pick where I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
That's not the most financially responsible thing to
Yeah.
do. And no 17-year-old is going to understand what $100,000 in student loans, how that's going to impact their adult life.
Yeah.
You don't have that forward thinking at that
Yeah,
point. You
definitely.
don't even know what a paycheck looks like at
Definitely
that point.
not. Yeah, I made that mistake. I went to a private school for culinary school, and although I did have nutrition there, which kind of I feel like gave me a little bit of a benefit.
Yeah.
I think culinary school, for the most part, and don't hate on me on the internet for this, but I feel like you can learn those skills. It's a trade. You can learn that skill on the job. You don't need to go to, if you pick the right places and educate yourself, you don't need to go to that school to get those skills.
Right.
But anyways, I had a bunch of debt and everything. So now with my son, and I do use my degree, obviously I have a nutrition business, but with my son, I'm like, listen, if you don't know what you want to do, like, why don't you just go to community college first and then spend a couple years and maybe try to do some thinking and then go from there, because I think he wants to do physical therapy, which, like, there's a Russell Sage's around here. There's a couple SUNY schools. Russell Sage is private.
Right.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm like, go to community college, get those basic classes that anywhere else you'd be paying so much more for.
Right.
Get those in, then decide what you want to do, and then we can go from there. But I didn't have that either. I did go to community college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then when I finally figured it out, I was like, okay, this is fun. And I spent all my savings on beer, basically. So I did work really hard as a kid. I worked in restaurants and saved up a bunch of money and just blew it all. And I really wish that I had that kind of mentor that could, tell me about, you've got so much money, like, put some of it away.
Right. And I think it's great that, parents want to let their kids make decisions, but it's just, being older, wiser, having life experience, like, you're in such a position to pass forward that knowledge to your kids and just like kind of guide them more so, and ultimately it is their decision, but just even having those conversations like you're doing with your son, and I think that that's smart, and I think that's great.
And it's like, I tell him, like, I don't know everything. I've made mistakes, and I'm just teaching you what I've learned through those mistakes.
Right.
You're gonna make a lot of those same mistakes, but
Yeah.
like, we can try to mitigate that if if you want to.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do I got for you? You got a whole sheet there. Okay. Why do you think people are struggling financially right now? Like, what do you think is the main factor? I know we were in a bit of a recession, and I'm not an economist. I don't really follow that so much, but it's just been tough. I know that not recently, but I was looking for a job, and it's really hard to get a decent paying job without a master's degree.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was just my story, but what do you think is the...
I think that a lot of people like to place the blame on the economy.
Sure.
Who's president.
Right.
Things that are out of their control. And yes, all of those things are playing a factor. Inflation, since COVID people have really felt the effects of that. But I do think that so much of the reason why people are drowning today is because of their own decisions.
Yeah.
So for example, like, I think that social media has just, as good of a tool as it has been, it can also just be, it's had really bad effects on our society as a whole.
Yep.
In that it's the lifestyle inflation, it's the keeping up with the Joneses. You see your friend on a trip to Europe and you want all those same things. And I think that, our parents' generation, I think that they did well financially because they weren't trying to do that. Most parents, like, they weren't going on these big vacations every year and taking their families on cruises or to Disney every year. They were a lot more like humble with their lifestyle. And so like what I see, for our generation, the challenges is people want everything that they want now. There's a good quote: you can't have everything you want all at the same time.
Yeah.
So I see people who, they still have student loans from college. They're buying the $600,000 houses for their growing family because they have 2 or 3 kids, and half of their income is going out for their mortgage, and then they have daycare costs on top of it.
Yeah.
But then they still haven't paid off their student loans from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just think that people have too much on their plate all at the same time, because a lot of it is, though, due to lack of planning. I think that people are like, well, we want this, we want the house, we want, to start growing our family. We will figure it out on the back end.
Yeah.
And that is the danger. You
Yeah.
will not figure it out.
Right. Buy it first, figure it out later.
Yeah. Some people, like, I see a lot of things where people are having kids and then their parents are having to be forced to retire to help with the grandkids.
Yeah.
But they're not in a good position financially to retire either. So I think just a little bit more intention and forethought, and taking time to move through life at your own pace on your own timeline and not be rushing to do all those things by age 30.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are making big mistakes in life because they're just like, I gotta have all my things together at 30.
Yeah.
And you get in a lot of trouble that way.
Yeah, you got to let it play out on your own timeline.
Right.
And it all comes down to your choices. Like you said, it's like that personal responsibility that, I really want that nice car, but, I'm not in the place right now to do it.
Right.
And it's going to take a little bit of work and discipline to get there.
Yeah. And also, like, be intentional with, what in life gives you joy. You don't need the big house, the fancy cars, the travel vacation every year. Pick 1 or 2 areas that you really care about and focus on those. So like my whole thing is like, I love travel. So I bought a smaller condo where I don't have a lot of expenses, and it's smaller because I don't want to be there 24/7.
Right.
Whereas for someone else, I have friends, they have $1 million homes,
Yeah.
but they work from home. They don't do a lot of vacations. So it's just, different priorities for different people, and that's absolutely okay.
Yeah. I told that to my son too. I was like, when you think about what you want to do, you absolutely have to think about what you want your lifestyle to be, and then adjust accordingly. So you're not going to be able to have a huge house if you want to be a chef.
Right.
I mean,
it's realistic.
Yeah, it's realistic. So, and I think that I've been thinking about this a lot, come to terms and made peace with that, like, I don't have to keep up with the Joneses. Like, my life is my life, and it can look however I want. And I kind of just want a simple life.
Simple.
I just want a little. I do want a house. I want to buy a small house, and I've chosen this career path. It's a path of an entrepreneur, which is, it equates to how much work you put into it.
Yeah.
But it can be very difficult, and it doesn't pay out a whole lot. But on the other side, I have a lot of time for myself, where I can go play golf with my son, or I can go do whatever I want to do. I could travel if I wanted to. So, there's a trade-off there. Yeah. And I'm okay with that now. And
learning to enjoy the simple things in life is totally a maturing 30s, like 40s for some people. But you realize that those fancier things, like, don't always make you happy. And unfortunately, I see it every day. Yeah. from the outside looking in, a lot of people look like they should, be very happy with all the things that they have, and they're not.
Yeah.
And I just would never want to be in a situation where I, have those things and are miserable, and you do see it. And that's where you can't compare yourself up to other people or what the lifestyle that they show on social media, because 1 second they're, this perfect looking family, and the next they're getting divorced and the husband has gambling debt and, all that stuff. Like, it's crazy.
I think, like you made the point earlier, social media has done us dirty in the fact that, like, we do want to just compare ourselves to all these rich people or people that are living their best lives, but they're only showing the highlights.
Right. And as a financial planner, man, I see under all the hoods. Yeah. And it's never what you think. Yeah. So that's why I always tell people, don't compare yourself, because you have no idea if that money is funded by credit card debt, funded by inheritance that they got. You just never know. So it's not even worth, getting upset or spinning your wheels about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think I kind of did that for a little while, but I think I'm over it now at this point. Yeah. It's like, I'm happy with what I got.
Yes.
And I've worked really hard to get where I'm at, and I just want to enjoy my life and, whatever that looks like. And I don't need millions of dollars to do that. No. I'm more happy with my time. I don't need all this money. Like, I just need enough to get by, enough to support my family, and make healthy choices. Luckily, I own a food business, so I save money there. Huge foodie, and that definitely costs money these days. But yeah, it's just about, like, identifying, what you want to spend your time and money on, and allocating for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people could be happier if they made their lives more simple.
Yeah, for sure. So, making your life simple, living your life now, how do you balance that, saving for the future, and, like, living your life now and enjoying yourself? Because people have, like, retail therapy, they have expensive habits, whatever,
which is not our place to judge, know. Like it's just, and that's why I tell clients is, like, I am never going to judge you if you spend, if your thing is retail shopping and you want to spend $500 on a dress, by all means, but then that means that you have to sacrifice in other areas.
I just bought a new set of golf clubs.
Yes.
And it was like $600.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I really gotta just try to not spend as much this month. That's another thing, by the way. I'm trying to do this no spend month. It's so hard.
Right.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
Because a couple of people at the gym were saying they did a no spend, like, 3 months.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, that seems a little extreme. That's like the 75 hard of the financial world.
And that's the thing that you see in nutrition. Extreme does not work.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself some room to spend. So that's why I like doing a budget and not cutting out everything, just like nutrition. Like, don't cut out sweets entirely. Don't do no chocolate for a month. Designate days where once a week, twice a week, I can treat myself with a sweet. Same with the budgeting. Right. If you have a shopping problem, and that if you start tracking, which is so important to start tracking everything, but then look at your spending, and if you're spending $1,000 a month on clothes or makeup, at Sephora, then let's just try to dial it back. Let's start by just give yourself $300 a month to spend. Yep. Envelope method is really good for that. Like, you don't have to do it for every single part of your budget, but let's say you do have a shopping addiction, then give yourself $300, take it out of your bank account, put it in an envelope, and, like, that is your designated money for the month to spend on.
Okay, yeah. So you have it, it's more tangible. It's not just like your debit card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, like, not cutting things out, but still giving yourself, like, so you can still spend and feel good about that, but that you're capped, at a certain amount, and you're paying more attention to it.
Yeah, that's the thing that just over the past few weeks, since I'm like, I'm going to do this no spending thing. It's not working.
Yeah.
But I am more aware now. And that's what I think, and perfect metaphor for nutrition, analogy for nutrition. Once you start tracking your calories or your proteins, carbs, and fats or whatever, you just get that sense of awareness of like, oh, I really am not eating enough, or I'm overeating here, or whatever. And it's the same thing with a budget, right? Like you're like, oh shit, maybe I am spending too much on whatever.
Right. And it's you don't need to make all these huge changes at once, but just start with the awareness. Start looking every single month, just looking at what is happening.
Yep.
And then maybe a couple months down the road, start to make some adaptations in your budget. But you don't have to overhaul. The first thing is what gets tracked gets managed, and just getting a sense of where you are, what you're doing, or that you're not eating enough protein a day, or half of your macros is coming from fats every day. That kind of stuff is helpful to then start making changes.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the baseline. It's the cornerstone. You absolutely have to track what you're doing, or else you just don't know.
Right.
It's
and a lot of times I think that our memory or what we're guesstimating is so far off. I will ask clients, what do you think that you spend on this a month? Or I'll even ask people like what their salary is. Yeah. And they'll be like, well, I think it's this. I'm like, well, I have time. Like, look it up. Yeah. It's always off.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So, it's important to like actually look at the data and spend time on that, because what you think you're spending and what you're actually spending are usually very different.
And I've learned that through business too. At the end of the year, I write off a bunch of, deductions or whatever for taxes, and I look at my spending and I'm like, oh, yeah, it just, you categorize things and you're like, oh, I did spend a little more here or there. And for my business has helped me personally as well, because a lot of times I'll have to like run to BJ's if I'm short on broccoli or something, and go grab a bag from there. But those little things add up.
Right.
And so it just, seeing like, oh, I'm spending more here. I want to be a little bit more disciplined and plan better about, getting the right things before I need to run to the store.
Right.
For me, it was going out to eat a lot, and it just adds up so much.
So the three biggest categories I tell people that, like, let's say that you're starting to do a budget and you've committed to yourself that you're going to start saving, 15% towards retirement, and then you'll figure out your budget with the other 85%. If you're struggling to make that work, look at the three main areas I feel like people overspend are their mortgage or rent, and then car payments, and then eating out or going out on weekends. Yeah. I mean, you go out on a weekend in Saratoga, you'll probably spend $100 a night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, easily. Yeah, for two people to go out to dinner is like $150, $200 if you have wine and multiple courses. Also, I feel like because you don't like with cash, it's a little different. You can see it coming out of your wallet, and it's easy to just throw your debit or credit card out there and let it rack up. Yeah, and then you're like, oh yeah, I only spent $300. You go and look at it, you spent $600.
Right,
it's crazy.
Yeah, and the other thing, like going back to the golf clubs. Yeah. I like spending money on things that I'm going to use all the time. Right. So $600 for golf clubs, like, yeah, that's steep, but I mean, you're golfing once, twice a week. Yeah. Like, that is a lot per unit. Like, that makes sense for the amount of usage you're going to get. If I spent $500 on, or even like, let's say $300 on a dress for a wedding that I'm going to wear one time, this is why I rent clothes now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because it's just not, it's per unit of use. It's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've gotten a little bit better about that kind of stuff, and, not spending money on frivolous things. Going out to dinner is fine. Like, it's nice every once in a while to, with your partner or whatever you want to do. That's great. But, just all the time, like the golf clubs, I can get a lot of use out of them. Something like a car is a very important decision, but like you're gonna be in that thing, you want to feel comfortable in that thing, right? So a little bit different. Let's see. Well, what's the best advice you could give someone for their finances? That seems like a very vague question, but
so I mean, I feel like we talked about a couple different things. It's just like tracking, hugely important. Yeah. Being intentional with your like life goals, and then using your finances as a tool to get to those things and doing it in a thoughtful manner. Really taking things one thing at a time. Again, I see so many people where they are having a wedding, buying a house, and having kids all within like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 most expensive things that you can do.
Yeah.
And you're not taking time in between to see how your cash flow adapts to that.
Yeah.
So I think just not rushing the process and, just allowing yourself time. You're not racing against anyone else. It's your own life. It's your own progress. Like I love the quotes that are all about the only person you're up against is the person who you were last year.
Yeah.
It's just you versus you.
Yeah.
And then the other big part of it is either having a partner who is totally aligned and also invested in personal growth and financial growth. You either have a partner like that or you have no partner at all.
Yeah.
Because someone who is, like we talked about, like if they're day trading or they're sports betting every month hundreds or thousands of dollars, that is just going to detract from, your growth as a person.
Yeah.
So that's where, like they say, the most important financial decision you can make is who you marry.
Sure.
And for me as a planner who I see a lot of relationships on the back end, like in retirement, I mean, that's the difference between people who are happy in retirement and people who are miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think marriage is kind of a crazy thing these days because it's just, you're joining finances.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, you're making, symbolically you're making a commitment of love and all that stuff, and that's great, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, you're making a big financial decision because everything is linked now.
Right.
Prenups are great, but
right.
Yeah, it's our account.
Right.
So.
And I think it's also, looking at your world at the gym, right? If you are someone who is hitting the gym, daily or consistently, and you're very invested in maintaining healthy fitness, and your partner's at home, never gets off the couch, plays video games every night, and eats their weight in potato chips and, isn't cooking healthy, you're probably not having a good relationship.
Yeah.
Because you guys aren't aligned and there's resentment that builds. So whether it's financially not being on the same page, fitness being not on the same page, I rarely see people work out long term if they're not aligned on those things and if they don't have like a team partner built in with that to support each other, because you need an accountability partner. For
sure. I was dating for a while. Like I was in a relationship, and then when I was dating, I was listening to a lot of like dating podcasts, relationship type podcasts, and that was the biggest thing. It's like, get those big questions out of the way first. What do you want out of life? Do you want a simple life, or do you want boats and trucks?
Right.
Do you want all this stuff? And I think it's great to just get on the same page about that, and then because eventually, I don't know, everybody's different, but the end goal is spend the rest of your life together, right? Maybe get married, and that's a huge decision. So you want to definitely make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think that not enough couples, like, they think again that after they get married they'll figure it out, and there's no transparency pre-marriage.
Yeah.
And that leaves room for a lot of surprises, or that leaves room for, there's talking about being on the same page, and then there's the actions that go behind it.
Yeah.
Or, people hiding debts from each other, people hiding that gambling.
Yeah.
Those are all things that you want to know ahead of time before you make that type of commitment to someone.
Yeah.
So that's where like those conversations really need to be started when you're getting to know someone, and everyone doesn't need to be at the same place. They don't, like, you see relationships all the time where one person's a spender, one person's a saver, but they have to be committed to improving themselves, and they have to be coachable, because the people who are like the avoidant personalities, right?
Yeah.
Those are going to be really hard people to help with their finances if they refuse to look at it, refuse to show you, their accounts. And you just, if you're getting married, that's not something that you want to be figuring out in your first couple years of marriage.
Yeah. Interesting, being a man and having like all these stereotypes around men and what they should be the breadwinners or whatever, like the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And now women are working. Sometimes women are making more than men, and it's like an interesting dynamic. I think like you have to be okay with that, and like I'm okay with that. My girl makes more than I do.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. Like I said, it's not. For me, it's not about like how much I make. I don't really care. It's more about, do I have enough?
Right. And the thing is, like, it does not have to be equal, but the balance has to be equitable. So, like, maybe, you know, in a situation where one of the two partners makes a lot more than the other, you know, maybe one person is happy to cover more of the rent or mortgage because the other person is contributing in other ways. You know, they're the one cooking dinner every night. And so I just think that there's no stencil for how people always ask me, you know, how do married couples combine finances and what does that look like? It's so different for everyone, but I think that transparency is so important, and splitting things in a way where both people feel comfortable and they feel like they are supporting each other financially and giving what they can give. And it does not have to be split 50-50.
Right.
But you have to do it in a way that you are both happy, you both respect and appreciate what the other person is bringing to the table, because if you don't, that's where resentment comes in.
Oh yeah, big time. What are some of like the biggest like myths out there, that like stuff that you see on social media or whatever that you're like, this is trash?
Oh, that's tough because my feed is like so curated that I don't get that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Are there stuff that you've seen that you've been like questioning?
Well, there's just stuff out there that's like, you know, like starting a certain type of account versus a 529 for your kids, like funneling money. Like one of the things I'm trying to do is I tried to do it, but it's just too expensive. Funnel money from my business for my son's future and put it into an account. Yeah. The problem that I see with that, and some guy was like, oh, here's how you do it. And I looked into it and I'm like, well, I'm paying so much in taxes and fees, like payroll fees, that it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And that's where I think it is so hard to try to look at social media and the advice, because they're trying to give general advice for specific people with their specific situations. That's why I think it is so important to work with a financial planner, because we can see the entire picture and give you specific advice based off of like what is going to work for you and taking into account all the different parts. So it's not just saving, it's not just retirement planning, it's how is it going to affect your taxes today versus down the road. That's the part of the social media that I don't like, in that they're recommending certain accounts where that could really mess up someone's taxes or financial picture when they take on advice that you know, is not going to work well for them. There's really no advice that you can give people that's like the magic, you know, solution to everything. Like, you know, if you look at things saying Roth IRAs, everyone, single person should have those. I mean, it's a great account, but not everyone can contribute to them. And in certain cases, like, you would never think that Roth IRAs could affect your student loan forgiveness if you're a state worker. And that's a thing. But you wouldn't know that, right? No one would know that. But I think that that's where it's important. And that's where you're going to save so much time just going directly to an expert versus trying to filter, you know, the research yourself. And you'll learn the hard way when you get your taxes next year.
There's two other things that I saw that came to mind just now. One is like these investment apps like Acorn and all that stuff. And I don't remember specifically, but I think they take a huge fee when you use them. But what do you feel about those? Is that almost like day trading?
So I think that the idea behind it is good, in that it doesn't matter how much you start with, just start something. You know, that's the premise of Acorns. Like, you know, $1 a day can build up to something. The problem is that when I ask anyone who has an Acorns account what type of account they have, they don't know. Yeah. They just opened up an investment account. They don't know if it's an IRA, which is more tax preferable, or just a straight brokerage account that is taxable every year. So a lot of times this is like part of the problem of when people start, you know, doing their own financial planning, is then we have to undo what they've done. Yeah. And, you know, maybe they were investing in a taxable account and they'd be better served long-term investing into a tax deferred account. Yeah. So then we're closing the Acorns app and moving that money into other places. So,
and losing money in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and most of the time I just feel like people just pick random investments or what they think will do well. And I think you're taking on a lot of risk when you're investing in single companies.
Yeah.
I know I posted last week about how, Peloton and COVID, everyone thought that was huge. Everyone was buying Peloton back then. Now the stock is worth nothing.
Yeah.
So you just never know what's going to happen with single companies. So it's a lot of risk that people take on, and people don't do the research in investments in general, which if you work a full-time job, you're not going to have time to.
Well, like you said, people at your company work 40 hours a week behind a computer staring at a screen all day.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
Right.
So to think that you can do that for yourself is
a little
it's a little silly. The other one was, we talked about David Ramsey. He says no credit cards, no debt. Clear your debt first,
right,
and then start working. What do you feel about that?
I think I love a lot of Dave Ramsey stuff. Some of the stuff is a little outdated, and I think that, it doesn't give a lot of room for balance. It's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So, because he's a big proponent of 15-year mortgages and, paying that off as quick as possible. And not everyone is going to do well with an extreme strategy. I think that the people who are able to do that, they cut off all spending for 2 or 3 years, and they give themselves a timeline to do that. And they don't go on vacations. Basically, they don't live for 2 or 3 years to do so. That's great, but also, what happens if something happens to you, at that 2 or 3 years? It's the same thing with how I feel about early retirement. That's great if you're able to retire early and you got that balance along the way. But the people, I have friends who they want to retire early and they never go on vacation. I don't know if they're living their, a fulfilled life right now.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that get to retirement and pass day 2 of retirement. And what was all that effort for? I personally would rather enjoy every year I'm on this earth, but also do the responsible savings. And again, if you are saving 10 or 20% for retirement, you should be able to live off of 80-90% of your income. But that just involves work, paying attention to budgeting, and just paying attention to the rest of your money is going.
Yeah. I feel like the whole retirement thing is a little stressful for me, just because being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
I'm saving, and I think I'm doing okay there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have numbers for you now, but
okay.
but I think I'm doing okay. I'm putting a decent amount away, and I don't have a pension package.
Right.
Or I don't have a that type of job that's going to take care of me afterwards.
Yeah.
401k. I looked into doing a 401k for my super small business, and it just
doesn't make sense.
It costs so much to do that for myself and my 2 employees.
Right.
So, yeah, I think just if you don't have a state job or a corporate job or whatever that's going to offer you that thing, then you need to do that for yourself. And how important it is saving for retirement.
Right.
Because you're going to get to a certain age, you're not going to be able to work, and you're going to be completely reliant on that savings.
Yeah. And the big thing today is that so many people are forced to leave the workforce early. Not because they want to retire early. They are forced to because they're taking care of their own elderly parents who can't afford long-term care. They're leaving because they have to take care of grandkids for daycare because their kids can't afford it. Yeah. There's health concerns, health reasons.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you really want to put yourself in a position where you can leave on your own time, and not be forced to do it. My dad's 77, still working because he wants to. I've seen the numbers. He absolutely can. But that's his purpose in life, and I think that's great. I'm not trying to get him to retire early, because if he did, his mind would go downhill so much faster.
Sure.
And he loves what he does. So I think it's, we always, when we do our financial plans, there is a minimum age that we're trying to get people to, but if they want to work longer, great. But we want to make sure that that plan can work, if they retire at a certain age that's reasonable. I'm not running any financial plans for people to work until 70, because they may not be able to, health-wise do it.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. My mother's the same way. She's still working. She's part-time jobs, taking in-home care, whatever. Yeah. But she's retired. She's good. I have a non-financial related question. We'll end it on this one. I ask all my guests this. It's a food-related question. So, let's say you're on death row. Okay. And your last meal can be whatever you want. You can order from anywhere in the world. You could have as much of it as you want. You can have as many things as you want. What would it be?
It's so hard because a couple years ago it would be one answer, and now that I'm so focused now on nutrition, it would be different.
It's your last meal, so just go for it.
Oh yeah, it won't matter about my future body because it won't be there.
Nope. Right.
I grew up on mac and cheese, so I'd
Yeah.
have to say like Panera mac and cheese would be my big one. But do I have that anymore? No, because it's trash.
Yeah, it's comfort food.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's, again, that goes back to my childhood, what I've had to change nutrition-wise the past 5 years because of how I grew up eating pasta, bread, all the bread.
Yeah.
And now, eating sandwiches is not even an option in the household.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to focus on that protein and focus on all the meats and eggs and all that stuff. But
So mac and cheese?
yeah,
That's
I'll
it?
stick with it.
I got
what else?
You could do anything
you
want.
can put that together a whole meal.
Yeah.
I also love sushi though.
Sushi? Let's
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
It would be breakfast. It would be
Okay.
fresh blueberry pancakes. I'd do a fat steak.
Pancakes, yeah.
Eggs, hash browns, and a really tall, bottomless beer. Cold beer.
I mean, if I had to pick where to have this meal, Triangle Diner in Saratoga.
Yeah, hell yeah.
They got some great pancakes,
Yeah,
and
they
they
do.
do enormous portions.
Yeah, I love it
Yeah.
there. We go there every Sunday. Shout out Triangle Diner.
Ooh, ooh.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. And
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun.
if anybody wants to get a hold of you or work with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on social media, reach out to me there, or they can go to our financial planning website. It's www.fadirfinancialgroup.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks again. Shedding light on financial peace, financial wellness, big part of the whole wellness picture. So there you have it, folks. If you want to get a hold of her and get some financial advice, go to the places that she said. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Stay healthy, my friends. Peace.